Through conversations with scientists, theologians, scholars, thought leaders, and friends of the Spirituality and Sustainability Global Network, Make It Sacred explores the intersectionality of spirituality and sustainability and why this intersection is critical at our existential societal tipping point. Without spiritual grounding, we won't have a commitment or political will to create hope for sustainability. Co-creation always starts with a conversation. And what are we co-creating? A spiritually grounded passion that comes from a sacred understanding of the earth. Hi, my name is Maddie, and I'll be your host as we start these conversations together. I don't think there's a better time of year to have this conversation about shopping, why shopping locally is so important, and not just for the goods that we are buying, but also the food that we are buying and putting into the bodies of ourselves and our loved ones. In this episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with a dear friend, Camden, who is the co-owner of Neighbors, a local market in Leesburg, Virginia. She's deeply passionate about food, especially growing it. In this conversation, we talk about the sustainability of shopping locally. Hint, what's good for us is also good for the earth. How healing our planet begins at the community level, and the importance of gathering. Camden loves gathering with friends and sharing meals with homegrown veggies. You can typically find her dancing or practicing Jiu Jitsu in her free time. Camden is a joyful, energetic, and passionate young woman, infusing her values into all that she does. We hope you enjoy this inspiring conversation, and we're so glad to bring you yet another young person who is really living out everything that we value here at the SSGN. If you would like to support us with more than just your ears, you can go to our website, spirituality-sustainability.net, and click the donate button in the top right corner. And you can also leave us a review on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you're listening. It just helps to spread the word and get our show out to more people who can learn from the inspiring guests that we get to speak with. I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation with Camden as much as I loved having it. Can you just start by telling us about what your cultural upbringing was and what your childhood was like and how that propelled you into what you're doing now?
Sure, I can do that. I can try to do that. Yeah, it's really interesting to kind of just even start to take a step back and put my mind there. Okay, so yeah, I grew up in pretty privileged upper middle class area with really loving family and very close family, like close to like my immediate family, my mom, my dad, my brother. It was just us in our house, but also I had relatives all around. Like my parents moved, or they didn't move. My dad was in the Navy growing up, and he lived all around, but they always ended up back in this area or in the area of Tidewater, so like Eastern Virginia, and having that really close connection with grandparents and cousins and just family all around made my family feel a little bit bigger than it was, at least like my immediate family, because my cousins were like my siblings, my aunts and uncles were like my other parents. Like it was kind of just a very, yeah, I would say, like looking back, like really beautiful childhood, especially in connection to my family. Also, I feel called to say this. My grandmother, she was a kindergarten teacher growing up. She had like a passion for teaching children and like caring for kids, and she ended up opening up her own daycare in like southern Chesapeake. And all of our cousins went to this daycare, like grew up through this daycare. It was like the number one place, like childcare place in this area. And I used to say to people, like, especially growing up, I was like, "Oh, I was a daycare kid." Like, both my parents worked full-time jobs, and yeah, I was kind of like raised in the daycare world. But looking back, I'm like, that it was such a cool experience because it wasn't just any daycare, it was my grandma's daycare. We definitely had some like VIP privileges, or we thought we did, push the buttons a little bit in that space. But yeah, just definitely had a lot of fun as a kid, and especially growing up near the coast, getting to spend time at my grandparents' house in the Outer Banks and just like being around water a lot. Those are like my fondest memories of just being exposed to some different nature than where I am now. But yeah, just exposed to a lot of nature, outdoor play, and also being able to kind of be surrounded by so many loved ones. I felt like I feel now that that definitely shaped a lot of who I am now. And when at least I get this feedback now that I'm a very like openly loving person, and like I could like love up on, get to know a stranger really quickly because yeah, I feel like I was just exposed to a lot of people of all age range and all kinds of demographics at a really young age. So yeah, so grateful for that little piece. But it's interesting, like there were definitely times in my, especially in my like early 20s, where I was looking back, and it's hard to not do this sometimes, but where you get a little angry at your upbringing. I mean, like, oh, what a spoiled brat. I was so privileged, and I just like didn't know what the world was like. And you almost start to blame yourself for or your parents or whatever. Like it was the worst thing. Like this great thing was the worst thing, or that he didn't have enough hard times to help me like see the world in another way. And I try to think about it now, like even as I'm saying it, and think that wow, needed that. I needed that, all of that love, all of that experience to then go through all of the other transformations that happened in my yeah, young adulthood, adolescence, adulthood to bring me where I am now. So, yeah, I know that was like kind of all over the place, but I think that there was a lot of love there for sure, and still is with my family.
That's amazing. That's such a gift to have such a loving family that feels so not everyone gets that, and that's amazing. That shows a little bit of why you are the way you are, why you are so openly loving. So, that's wonderful. I'm happy you grew up like that.
Yeah. I'm really grateful for it, and definitely grateful to have the mother that I had to kind of show me, especially as a woman, how to love and nurture yourself, but then your family. I feel like that was really instilled, and not a forceful way, but it was just she was that way, and I looked up to her so much, even though we are very different. I see her now as like, she's still my one of my biggest role models, and I want to love as intensely and as ferociously as she does to my kids someday.
I feel like something about you too, and the reason I wanted to interview you for this is that you don't just love people or people you're in a relationship with or these kinds of things, your dog, but you really love the things that you value with your work. And so can you tell us a little bit about that, what Neighbors is, what your work is, and why that's so important to you?
Yeah, definitely. That it's a complicated story of how Neighbors came to be a little bit, but what Neighbors is a it's a small grocery store in Leesburg, Virginia, that sources as much as we can from local farmers, producers, artisans around kind of the Northern Virginia area, Eastern Maryland, or Maryland area, as regionally as we can, but we try to get as close to us as possible. And At the time when I came into like inquiring and working with my partner Allie, my business partner Allie, I was just managing for her at the time with a store that was called For Goodness Sake Natural Foods. And that was a store that she had bought a few years prior, and she didn't change much about it. It had been a health food store, kind of your classic, kind of like a supplement shop, not a whole lot of fresh grocery, but it had a little bit of it had some of that. When I came on, or I came into meeting her, it was definitely on a social level of living in this area. I had a different occupation, a different business that I had started that was working with edible plants and like landscape design as well. And I didn't have any friends, and I met her, and or someone referred me to go in and just meet her to maybe start working a little bit to just be able to meet more people, because naturally I am a very social person, but at the time I did not have any friends. And I met her, and I couldn't help but to fall in love with her. She's incredible. But then I kind of did a lot of intaking of like, well, okay, where am I? What is this store? And yeah, like where's the potential lie? And the more I spent time there, I saw and realized what the area was. Like I didn't grow up in Northern Virginia, but I started to see the very obvious point that it's one of the most wealthy areas to live in the entire country, maybe even in the entire world. And the background that I had come from and connection to growing food and farming and being very close to, yeah, checking in with our values kind of constantly within the work that we do and really wanting that. I saw that within this space and started sharing conversation with Allie just about kind of asking her questions like, what do you feel like is the purpose of this shop? What are you doing here? And as we started to she answered some of the questions, and then I was helping her answer some of the questions, and we were dreaming some things up together about the future. We kept coming back to this kind of core of the purpose, and the purpose was community and connection and resource, like becoming a almost like a watering hole of sorts that a community can come to and like be nourished by. And like what are the things the things that I value are our deep connection in general with people, but with the land. And sometimes I think our society, the culture that we grow up in, it really does get far from that like origin story, the source of where we get our food, all along the line of getting your food, especially when you shop at, even if you shop at Whole Foods or Martin's or Food Lion or whatever it is that where you go to get your groceries, you don't really always make the connection in your mind of like, who grew this or where is it coming from, and like what kind of practices were used to grow this, like what am I actually putting in my body. And so getting this platform as this store, or having this platform within the store to basically become that and strategize on how to share about what this is for the community, that became our goal. So meeting her and then doing a lot of brainstorming, we knew within a little while that this wasn't something that someone can do on their own, that it takes a village. And I was definitely very inspired and coming in with a lot of passion. And so Allie and I talked about it, and we just decided that we would do this together. And we would rebrand the store. We would become a lot more food focused, like getting our nutrients from our food versus getting it from supplements. Not to say that we don't value that, because there are just some things that you can't always get from food, but that, yeah, that it's necessary. It's necessary to reach for those supplements, and it's also extremely helpful sometimes. So we just decided to kind of like look at the store and dream it up in a way that was a little bit closer to our values, like you mentioned, and identifying those, speaking to what that is, started to draw on this greater purpose. And I think, like anything, once you start doing something or start on a project that has a lot of that does have purpose behind it and it feels alive in your heart, then it feels like nothing can stop it. Like it has to happen. It's going to happen. And I will say the ride to kind of birthing this new space, and especially like not knowing what the feedback was going to be like, regardless of how alive it was in our hearts, just hoping that people would feel resonance. It definitely felt like there was a lot of, like, we had to have a lot of faith that, yeah, that people would resonate with it. Here we are, fast forward, it's been a year and a half since we rebranded the store. We launched a new name. We did a lot of remodeling within the store itself. We changed a lot of like what it was that we were buying to shift a lot more towards food, and within that, growing. I mean, my goal from the get-go was just connection to our farmers, and wanting to really make it a point and drive home that this is the food that we should be eating and that we want to be eating. We want to be consuming things that are, grown in a way that doesn't alter the form of the plant itself, that where a farmer gets to raise something, a fruit or a food that gets to be the highest expression of itself. And then to have that in the highest quality form within a store, and to get to buy that and make it and consume it, you get to experience the best nutrition for yourself, but you also get to go through it's almost a paradigm shift to start sourcing and consuming food specifically that is of this quality, of this caliber, because you become more excited about it. You become more excited about like preparing it, buying it, one, knowing who you bought it from, and then going through the communal aspect or on the familial level where you're starting to prepare the food and getting to like share an experience with your family or your friends around the table, to drop everyone into, okay, this is where this comes from, and now we're going to eat it, and slow down and to taste the food. Not everyone does that. I think we're all like, we're in this kind of fast-paced world, but for me, it's almost like I saw this from a distance. I saw this potential for this to happen, that maybe within this shop, we become the portal within this little suburban area that we live in, that's, pretty, that area is, there's data centers, there's technology everywhere, there's really really like high innovation businesses all around us, and there's a pace to it that is undeniable, the speed at which people move about their days and do their things. So if there was potential for us to become anything, it would be this like nurturing, nourishing portal for people to, even if it was like a walkthrough of the store, or they bought a bag of lettuce from us, or they picked up a bottle of natural wine, for someone to maybe like slow down and recognize all of the intention that went into sourcing it, growing the thing, making the thing, and then to experience in their own life. Maybe that would call upon the individual to slow down a little bit and have that, almost that like space of remembering what it means to be alive. And that's my I can definitely dive into the store in that direction and take it kind of far. There's like a basic aspect to it that's like, we're a grocery store in downtown Leesburg, and it's a small independent grocer that sources our vegetables, meat, eggs, dairy, lots of dry grocery, all kinds of soaps and skincare and all kinds of things. Like there's a lot of local producers making really high quality, beautiful products and growing really beautiful things. And if they're doing it, we have most likely put in a lot of effort to find them and or them find us to then be able to extend that out to the public. We did at one point, Allie and I were talking, and we're like, we're kind of a 7 days a week farmers market. This space that, there's a lot of the farmers and the people that we work with, the bakers, artisans, they're selling at the farmers market on the weekends. And usually it's just like a Saturday market. And then we just want to be this platform so that for people that miss that market, that these farmers and artisans, that they have another resource to, one, to sell their things, but then also for the community to have access to any time of the week. So we're really proud of that side of things, and the attention around it has grown so much, and the intention for planting a seed for paradigm shift. I like that phrase a lot, because I think it sometimes it doesn't happen in a big way, but it can happen in a small way. And you start to plant seeds, or it can be through podcasts, or it could be through anything. But the idea that the shop can be something like that, I think it feels good to me to think that maybe in a really small way, it could have a really big effect on an individual, a family, a community, and then maybe it doesn't impact the world per se, but maybe in some super far off way it does. So it's nice to think that it might.
It's interesting too to think about when you're speaking about this shop being in this place, the richest, kind of fastest, full of data centers, and I would imagine places like Amazon. And we think of those things when they're advertised. That's how you connect. It's having more technology and more of these things, and being able to order your groceries on the internet and they show up at your house in 30 minutes. And yeah, that's faster. But when you think about the things that actually nourish you and actually add life and time and all of those things that we need to make us feel like whole humans, it's going to a little place like Neighbors and speaking to people and getting really quality, nourishing food and knowing where your food comes from. It's just when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about how incredible I feel after I go to the farmer's market on a Saturday morning and talk to all the vendors that I buy my groceries from, as opposed to going to Walmart or ordering something online and it coming to my door. And what you're doing, you're really creating that, like you said, 7 days a week. That's really special. Can you tell us why is it important? Why is it more sustainable to support local farmers and shop locally?
So you have to, in a way, like, you have to be willing to recognize like these systems that are all around us and these cycles. And when you have a pool of money that is yours, just like with your people say, like, you vote with your dollar. Sometimes you what you choose to put your money into, who you choose to put your money into, the company, you support that thing. You are directly supporting whatever that is that you're doing. So on the financial level, I like to think of it as, like, I call it like the closed loop system. Like, you don't put your money so far away from you. Yeah, on the financial level, I think of this term, or like this saying, that you want a closed loop system, or you want a system where you're putting your money, something that you've worked hard to earn, maybe. And then, this is the world that we live in, where we have to use money to buy the things to nourish ourselves, and it's the cycle that will always be there. But when you get to choose who you want to support with your dollar, I think that's the one of the biggest responsibilities that we have, in a way. So, not to say like you have to come and shop at Neighbors and do this, but when you do decide to do like shop with us, or you do decide to go to the farmers market and buy direct from your farmers, or you yeah, if you're gonna do buy the things anyways, I think it's worth taking a moment to slow down and think about who ultimately you're supporting in the end. Because when you do choose to slow down and support your like local businesses, you are you're supporting your local economy. You're putting money back into something that is very close to you, where you can see yourself the ripple effects of how that's affected, or like who that affects and who that supports. It's hard when you throw your money really far away, or yeah, buy something on Amazon that's coming from China, or I don't know, anywhere else. It's not that it's not a huge problem or anything, but it is something where you don't really get to see the effects of it. You get to see the product itself, but you don't really get to see, yeah, what it's doing in the end, like where the dollar ends up. So I think really naturally it's everything is easier said than done. It's really difficult sometimes because for example, like we're one shop. We are the shop is owned by myself and my business partner, and we haven't owned businesses before. We don't have inheritance or like anything supporting us. Like we are doing this and living really modestly also to be able to run this thing that we feel has a lot of purpose. But I
And
mean,
you're
we
young
are.
women too. It's not like you've had like this career before to
Mhm.
support what you're doing now.
Exactly. So it to us it feels like, I guess, like speaking to this, like being able to speak about this in a really like direct way, while also it doesn't have to, like there's no intention to make anyone feel bad. It's important to feel like you can't, if you can't afford something or like you need to save money, like you have to do that because it's a game of survival at that point. But I will say, like there's, at least like with where we're at, like we want to make our shop as accessible as possible as well. Like would really like to not have a big like price difference between ourselves and certainly not any other local places, but we would love to compete with the big grocery stores, for pricing and being able to make it as affordable and accessible as that stuff. But what it comes down to is, Amazon and Whole Foods, it's also owned by Amazon. They can buy in these just massive quantities to be able to get pricing that is incredibly lower than ours. We have, for certain things, there's like the same minimum amount that you have to spend on orders when you're coming from like a buyer perspective, that you don't have a different kind of minimum than what Whole Foods has or that these other places have when you're ordering things. And I think it's just like important to remember like that size is a big difference, and that as much as it's great to be able to shop, especially like I bring up Whole Foods because I shopped at Whole Foods for a long time when I had to go to the grocery store, because it feels like the most quality food. You can buy organically, you can get a lot of great products. But what you can't get is, you actually can't get any of the vegetables that we sell in our store. You can't get any of the meat that we sell in our store. You can't get any of the like soaps and things that are coming direct from the artisans. Like I realized this, wow, it is a completely different experience. Like even though it's really cool stuff that Whole Foods sells, hardly ever are you supporting any local business when you shop there. So yeah, it does feel like there's a big difference there with that, and knowing that we'll never be able to compete with their pricing for things, but that we heavily strive to make things, affordable, make the store approachable. And I can't tell you enough how much intention goes into literally every single little thing in that shop. And yeah, I would say I can't even remember the question that you asked me actually.
That's okay. It doesn't matter.
But I started
You answered a
basement.
lot of other ones.
Yeah. On a level of, if I can speak to, I mean, obviously on the financial level, like that's you're creating this closed loop economy in a way by supporting locally, and you're feeding directly back into your local economy. But then also on sustainability level, it's tremendously more sustainable to get things that are grown right around you, that are raised right here, that are from a shop that's like right in your town versus ordering something on the internet or going to a store that has things shipped from all across the world to come into it. I think when you do slow down and you think about the fuel that it takes to get one from to get your product from one place to another, as well as just the even like the practices that go into growing and raising the things, when it's not only just when it's like closer, but like the quality and the time and like the slow down nature that it takes to raise and make these products, and yeah, connect deeply with like the natural environment that's really close to you. You are, you're doing a lot for the earth as well. So I like to like remember that sometimes with our store, and definitely like drive it home that we just want to get better and better and get more efficient and more sustainable when we can. And there's little things that are happening all the time in the shop that we're able to offer that do that. And yeah, it's something to be proud of.
This is something I want to touch on before Zoom kicks us off. But I know something that's really, really important to you too, just as much as sustainability and all of the reasons it's good for the environment and the community to shop locally, is community and spirituality. And maybe you can talk a little bit about what that looks like in your life and about the women's circle that you lead.
Mm.
Just share what you'd like to about that with us, because I think it's really important and inspiring for people to hear about.
Much like this shop, in connection to its values, and those values being that we want to support our community and be that resource portal, if you will, for the surrounding area in Leesburg and in general in Northern Virginia. There is this greater calling that I certainly have felt, and I think that there are many other people who have felt it or not been able to always put words to it, that is, yeah, that's there. And that's community on the level, like at the home level, or within, like finding the community that's like supporting our emotional well-being and our, like the journey of the individual. And so this women's circle that I help to co-facilitate in Berryville is, it's very similar to the shop in that way. It's we wanted to create this, yeah, this resource space for women to be able to come to. And I'll speak to why it's women specifically, but yeah, just a safe space to be able to come and show up authentically as yourself. I think often in the world, like we have so much divide and there's a lot of individualism out there that like you just get out there, you go and do the thing. You don't need anyone else. You shouldn't rely on anyone else. You shouldn't trust anyone else. Just go get it done. And me being in this area, and not, the area I live in right now is not where I grew up. I don't have family around here. As important as family is to me, I don't have that right around me, but I do have a community of women that exist that are my chosen family, are that resonate with me on that same level. And if anything, maybe even a deeper and a different level sometimes. So to be able to share with, yeah, to be able to share with women specifically on topics that sometimes can be kind of specific to us, it feels like a greater purpose. It feels like full connection to that spiritual side of ourselves. And it's interesting because I don't know exactly how to tie this together, but I would say like the work that we do within ourselves, especially within community, is some of the most powerful and impactful work that we can do. And when we choose to slow down and take a moment to, or if we're able to, or we have the luxury to be able to take an hour, 2 hours of our time during the week to do something for ourselves. It doesn't have to be a women's circle or a support group, or maybe it's talk therapy, maybe it's just going on a walk, maybe it's listening to music or doing something that's completely just for you. But when we do slow down and do that, like we are not only like nourishing ourselves, we're nourishing those people around us. By taking care of ourselves, we're taking care of others. And I think it's also a responsibility that we have. And it's definitely also easier said than done. And I would just encourage everyone, like men, women, whoever you are, children, to, yeah, to be able to find that space where you can be in that doesn't ask you to be anything other than exactly what you are and who you are to your core.
That's
Because
beautiful. And I think that's really where sustainability starts and why maybe we have such a hard time understanding it, because we don't know how to live sustainably ourselves, not even thinking about the environment or thinking about anything other than our own energy and our own nourishment and these sorts of things that have become, for some reason in this fast-paced world, so hard for us to grasp or understand on just a foundational level.
yeah, yeah, it's everything. Exactly. Like that's the foundation you build on. And I mean, you and I were talking before the podcast started that sometimes we feel all of the things, all of the emotions, especially as women with our woman hormones. We are feeling so much, and not only feeling so much, but then like in a world that's asking us to like keep up with the pace and keep going and not really cutting us a whole lot of breaks sometimes. And you know, depending on your circumstance, that might be look really different than like you or me speaking right now. But we have to find something that is ours, that is like a reminding that we are these human beings, we are animals at our core, and we need we need nourishment in order to live in this very man-made patriarchal society that we live in. We have to have that well that we water ourselves from.